Small businesses like this coffee shop in Clerkenwell have been significantly impacted by the pandemic. They've had to constantly adapt in order to survive. Now, companies of all sizes have been forced to innovate during the pandemic, but it really has opened some doors for disruptors, especially those with technology at their core. So in this episode of SchrodersTV, we want to take a look at this technological revolution, starting with a piece on healthcare.
Unwelcome but expected, the coronavirus has hit the UK.
Debenhams and Arcadia are the latest traditional retailers failing in the face of the coronavirus.
How it's going to affect the shop and my staff, and then it's how it's going to affect me.
The pandemic accelerated the adoption of many technologies that would have taken years, if not decades, to become mainstream. For some businesses, that will mean an uncertain future, if not the end of the road. For others, such as healthcare, the acceleration of the technological revolution will open up opportunities like never before.
The urgent need to respond to the pandemic made mRNA technology a household name. mRNA, or messenger RNA, is the cellular software that gets the body to make its own vaccine. So the mRNA codes for a viral protein to which the immune system responds, and that differs from traditional vaccines that either use a deactivated virus or a synthetic viral protein. The key benefit of this mRNA technology is speed. Once you have the genetic sequence of the virus, you can produce a candidate for human clinical trials in a matter of days. And this contrasts with the traditional approach, which would take 6 to 12 months.
In order to spot new variants, they have to read off the entire genetic code of the virus.
That process, called gene sequencing, used to take days to spot the individual mutations associated with a COVID variant. But this technology means the scientists can fully analyse 20,000 viruses each week.
Gene sequencing provides the map to deliver a definitive diagnosis in seconds. But it is the mRNA technology that provides the express and accurate delivery of potential cures. And its broader uses are already hitting the headlines.
From COVID to cancer, revolutionary vaccine technology called mRNA has produced 2 COVID vaccines so far.
mRNA is potentially transformational, and it could be transformational for diseases like cancer. Cancer, as we know, is a devastating disease. It claims millions of lives each year prematurely, and it costs economies billions of dollars. And therefore, any preemptive treatment of cancer would be a huge step forward. We think the science may well evolve in such a way that mRNA can be applied to cancer, that you can vaccinate against cancer, and that will be transformational for the world.
From creating a more effective winter flu vaccine to designing therapies and treatments to treat an illness specific to the patient, mRNA technology could be a game changer for the healthcare industry. So as this technological revolution takes over, where does this leave traditional companies? Banking is one area that has been disrupted by technology over time. But actually, it's during the pandemic that customers started to change their banking habits. So what does this mean for the future of traditional banks? Let's take a look.
We've just had an announcement from Santander, obviously one of the UK's biggest banks. They've announced the closure of 111 branches.
Banking over the counter is becoming a rarity, and customers are quickly becoming accustomed to banking apps and customer support driven by artificial intelligence. During the first few months of the pandemic, mobile banking usage grew by 34%. Online banking usage grew by 26%, but banking in branches declined by 12%. That's likely to be influenced by restricted opening hours. This shift in the notion of a bank being an app instead of a building has opened opportunities for disruptive technology companies.
Consumers, particularly tech-savvy consumers, Gen Zs and millennials, are tired of the bureaucracy, the complication and the cost of dealing with traditional banks. And as a result, they're flocking to the challenges, the guys like Revolut, who are providing an easy-to-use, cost-competitive service and doing so very effectively. And it's a similar picture in the commercial world. I mean, in a street like this with all these businesses, you're going to find that a lot of these businesses are going to migrate to new providers like Square, who offer not only good payment processing, but data management services and cash management services in a way that the traditional banks can't do.
They survived the financial crisis, but with tech giants taking market share, will traditional banks exist a few years from now?
Think about how often you interact with your bank through your mobile and compare that with how often you visit a branch. Mobile banking means we're in contact with our banks more than ever before, and it's also opened the door for banks to cross-sell additional products such as insurance and long-term savings at near zero marginal cost. Fintechs are on the rise, yes, but that doesn't mean that it's all over for the banks. Fintechs focus on areas such as payments, which are less regulated, but payments are only about 5% of the revenues for a traditional bank, and the banks focus on business-to-business payments, which is a much harder nut for the fintechs to crack.
Once fundamental to their business strategy, banks will now need to shift their focus away from physical branches in order to keep up with changing customer habits. If they adapt more agile business and operating models, they could keep up with the tech giants. But if not, they could find themselves collecting dust while the disruptors fly off the shelves. Alex joins me now in one of the coffee shops that would use smart banking instead of traditional banking. Now, Alex, we know that you're an advocate of smart banking, but is it really the end for traditional banks?
I don't think it's the end, Ash. I think it's the end of the beginning for the traditional banks. So clearly they're trying to react, right? They know they've got serious competition from all these new companies that have emerged out of nowhere, that are offering great service, very flexible service, flexible products, and products that are priced properly. And the traditional banks are trying to respond to that, but the problem is they have a lot of baggage. They have a lot of legacy systems that they need to update or replace, and they're constantly trying to keep up with these new challenges.
Another area that's been significantly impacted by the pandemic is travel and holidays. And we know this has really targeted the travel agents on the high street. But the companies that are completely online, so say the likes of Booking.com, have they fared a little bit better?
Yeah, so the online travel agencies have also had a really tough time. So Booking has a pretty dominant position in Europe now, but they have really struggled during the pandemic. Not surprisingly, I guess, right? Because we just haven't been able to travel. But the advantage you have with these online guys is that they don't have much capital employed. They don't require a lot of capital to run. They don't own hotels or accommodation generally. They just represent it and provide a platform for those hotel operators. So they've been able to manage their inventory, if you like, very successfully through this, and as a result remain in quite good shape considering the extent of the drawdown.
So while we're talking about this technological revolution, we can't ignore car travel. But we're all familiar with electric vehicles or EVs, and it has gone a little bit quiet. So where are we at with that?
Yeah, you're right, it has gone a bit quiet. It's a bit of a lull at the moment, isn't it? I think there are two reasons for that. One is that a lot of the early adopters, the people who are very aware of what's going on and want to commit to moving things forward, have already bought their EVs. They've stepped up and bought their Teslas or whatever is available. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that the rest of the population are currently all thinking about when they will buy an EV, because they have to. By 2030, you won't be able to buy a fossil fuel powered car in the UK and in many other European countries. And everyone, I think, is becoming aware of that and wants to buy an EV, but just isn't quite sure yet which one to buy, and obviously they have issues like range anxiety as well. So I think we're in this lull, but I'm super excited about the space because we're right at the cusp of what will be a very, very powerful transition. And you're now seeing the traditional automakers roll out products that are very competitive. All of a sudden, you're going to see a wave of change, a wave of new purchases in the EV space.
Great, so I think we've covered a lot of ground there, so thank you for your time and thank you for watching. As always, please send in any feedback you have, and you can catch previous, existing and future episodes of Schroders TV at www.schroders.com/SchrodersTV.